We are now 4 weeks from the Iowa caucuses, the first nominating contest of the 2020 election. 3 candidates, Joe Biden, Andrew Yang, and John Delaney, are holding events in the state today. 3 more candidates, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Tom Steyer, were all there over the weekend. Stephen Gruber-Miller covers the statehouse and politics for the Des Moines Register and joins me now. Hi, Stephen. Great to see you. So one of your latest articles for the Register looks at how each of the top candidates see their path to the presidency. What did you find?
Thanks for having me, Tanya. We looked at the top 4 polling candidates in Iowa's paths through Iowa. What has their arc been so far, and what do they need to do over the next 4 weeks to succeed on caucus night on February 3rd? So we looked at Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. And what we found is that it looks a little bit different for all of them. Biden is stepping up his appearances in the state. He's increasing his face time and really leaning on the idea that he's the best suited to defeat Trump and kind of bring a steady hand, a steady leadership. He's someone with experience. Bernie Sanders is trying to mobilize the progressive base here in Iowa and really bring out new people into the caucus process. Elizabeth Warren has been really strong on organization the whole time, according to all the observers that we've talked to, and she needs to, organize, and bring her people out. And Pete Buttigieg has just rocketed up from an unknown person 1 year ago to one of the top contenders in the state, and he needs to capitalize on that surge.
Quote in your article I would like to read from Beto O'Rourke's caucus director. She said, quote, "The beauty of this race is that it literally comes down to organizing and who has the strongest organizing team." So for our viewers who don't live in caucus states, help us understand why organizing is so important in Iowa.
Sure. Iowa has a caucus. It's not like a primary. You need to get delegates across the entire state, and that means you have to go into precincts around the state and go into smaller towns and smaller communities where there may only be a few delegates up for grabs, and you have to get those people, you have to reach a certain viability threshold. You need 15% of the people in all those places, and so if you can only get 15% in a few places around the state, you're not going to get very many delegates. You need a wide base of support. You need people in each community who are willing to come out on a cold February night in Iowa to stand in a room and say, "I'm for this candidate, and here's why you should be too."
And you got to keep moving. You can't stay in any one spot too long because you got a lot of ground to cover. All right, according to CBS News' latest Battleground Tracker poll, just 31% of likely Democratic caucus goers say they've definitely made up their minds. Another 57% say they've probably made up their minds. So what steps are campaigns making now to lock up support on caucus night?
Iowans are notoriously late deciders, and this is the period where if you've been candidate shopping a little bit, maybe you're getting close to making up your mind, and the candidates who are on your list, they need to take advantage of that. They need to be locking in support now by visiting the state, getting you to commit. And if you're someone who hasn't really been tuned into the process, now is the time, because there's only a few weeks left until caucus night. And so there are a lot of new people who maybe haven't been paying as close attention across the last year, but now are starting to come out and see some of the candidates, and those campaigns really need to catch those new people before caucus night as well.
All right, I also want to ask you about the calls by some in the Democratic Party to change the order of nominating contests in future elections. What do Iowa Democrats think of this idea, and how is Iowa's spot at the front of the schedule being defended?
Sure. I think Julian Castro was probably the biggest proponent of this, and he's since dropped out of the race. But every 4 years there are some calls for Iowa to no longer go first, and there are criticisms of it for that reason. So it's always sort of a battle for the Iowa Democratic Party and the Iowa Republican Party, which both parties are really united in terms of their goal of keeping Iowa first, to convince everybody that should happen. Supporters of the caucus process say that, what we were talking earlier about organizing, that's a really good advantage for a campaign to be able to be successful at organizing and drawing in a broad base of people. Like, that's a good thing for a campaign to be able to do, and Iowa's a good state for that. So they also say that in Iowa, candidates get a lot of face time with voters.
So, since that is the argument, though, I mean, there does seem to be some sense to the idea, well, let's maybe spread the love around a little bit, maybe have rotating states with the first caucus, but Iowans reject that out of hand.
I think that what you hear Iowans saying is, if not us, who would it be, right? And they say Iowans are really proud that they take the decision-making process seriously. And you hear candidates telling that to the crowds that they get at their events too. Joe Biden, for instance, has been starting his events off by saying, I know some people don't want Iowa to be first, but you do something really well, and that's you take us seriously, and you go to a dozen candidate events, and you see someone 4 or 5 times, and you see all the other candidates before you make up your mind. And so Iowans take a lot of pride that they really put in that work, and that's why they won't think that they're the right ones to be first.
Part of the culture of the state, I'm sure. All right, well, Stephen Gruber-Miller, thank you so much for reporting for us from Des Moines, Iowa. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.